Hey everybody, welcome to this installment of free live Xactimate training. Now, this claim that I'm working on here, this is a very simple water damage claim. It's a daily claim. These are the type of claims that a daily adjuster will stay busy with all throughout the year. I personally like them because this claim here will probably be probably about $2,000. It's gonna be very easy to get done. I'm gonna get it done very quickly. I'm gonna submit it, and there's very little room for a supplement later on. I mean, because it's so simple, we're probably not gonna hear from it again, and if we don't hear from it again, that means it got closed, the insured got enough, they got what they need to make all the repairs, and ultimately, I'm not gonna have to be bothered again, which is great. All right, so I'm gonna take you through the photos really quick, and then we're gonna start to build our estimate. So this is the front of the house. Okay, now this is where everything originated. Now before I got out there, the insured took a wall down that was belonging to this utility area here. So we took good photos. So what they also did, they weren't sure where the water was coming in. Something had failed, but they weren't sure where the water was coming in from. So they weren't sure if it was the boiler right here, or if it was a water heater or the boiler. So they weren't sure, so they took both of them out. Come to find out, it was the water heater. The insured's husband is involved in HVAC, so he has some sort of background in plumbing. They got rid of the boiler. That's on them. No documentation that would say that the boiler needed to be removed, so we won't be able to do anything about the boiler, unfortunately. But all right, so they have the water heater replaced. Now I took a picture of some pretty they took out some of the drywall that was back here, and as you can see, the insulation is in pretty bad shape. The drywall right next to it looks like it might be pretty old water damage, probably from that boiler that was right there, but it's still wet, so I'm gonna make sure that I estimate for its replacement just based on the fact that it's wet right now. Okay, so there you go. The floors obviously could use some help, and of course they took the piece of the wall down here. All right, so right outside of that utility room, this is the living area. So we got our overview photos, and this little hall area, this is where they took that wall down. Now I'm taking pictures right here because I'm gonna try to paint the ceiling here, and that ceiling runs continuously into the living room. Okay, so we're gonna be putting that wall back up there. All right, so there's that wall. Now, the adjacent wall on the other side of that little hallway, I took a picture of that so we know exactly where I'm looking. And I put the little moisture meter on there, and we're still catching some moisture. In the closet, that's right on the opposite side of that, still catching some moisture in there as well. Okay, so then there's the laundry room. Two pictures of the laundry room. The laundry room is fine. All right, there's a nearby bedroom. The bedroom was fine. Now, it's important, especially for new adjusters, to get those rooms, because if you don't get those rooms, then a file reviewer or the carrier may ask if you actually inspected those rooms, and they're just gonna have to take your word for it that you did. At least this way, I could have went all out and put my moisture meter on the wall and really heavily documented how this room doesn't, that this room doesn't have damage, but the insurer, the policyholder is pretty easygoing. There's nobody out there trying to be like super aggressive where I know they're gonna come back and claim damages somewhere else. So I just took the pictures, I checked it out. Just now at least I can say truthfully, oh, I definitely was in there, or else I wouldn't have been able to take these photos. Okay, and there's our sketch right there. So first things first, we're gonna dump these photos in. Okay, now we have our 26 photos that we just went through. Now we have them labeled and ready to go. Our next step now, we're gonna jump over and drop in our handy six-figure macro. We do the six-figure macro every time, no matter what the size of the claim is, because it gives all of our claims that a really important consistency and leaves no room for forgetting a line item or anything like that. I use this no matter what. I'll use the macro even when, even in a situation where, if it's like one line, maybe just a shed just got damaged in the backyard, I'll use the six-figure macro just so the estimate that I submit still has that same structuring that all of my prior estimates have. If there's one thing that, you know, a file reviewer or whomever is going to appreciate, it's going to be consistently. Even if you're bad at your job, at least if they know you're consistently bad, they know what to expect. So let's finish up this sketch here, and then we're going to move on to the line items. Okay, here we are. Our sketch is finished. Quick rundown of what we have in our sketch. We have our doors placed where they should be. All of the affected rooms are included in our sketch, and even have a little annotation here that was already preset in the macro, origin of loss, so we know where everything came and where everything went. All right, so now time to jump over to our estimate items, and now we're going to get things really moving. Okay, get rid of the folders that we don't need. Boom. Now, let's get back. So let's talk scope first, and then we'll execute those line items. Here are our photos. So here's our utility room, okay? So we have some of these wall materials, some of this drywall was removed prior to us getting out there. Okay, you see the bad shape of the insulation, so we're going to give them some insulation. We're also going to give them, just going to give them drywall around the whole lower perimeter, okay? And then we're going to clean that floor pretty heavily. It's just an exposed concrete, so we're going to clean that up pretty well. All right, so let's do that, and then we will, oh, and of course, this hole, we're looking directly, you're looking directly at the water heater, but the reason why you're looking at that is because a large piece of paneling that was over the wall was actually removed. So this whole area should be covered up, so we're going to allow for that as well. All right, let's get this out of the way. All right, so we go over to our macro, we hit our living room / bedroom area. We could, I don't think it really matters with the line items that I'm planning on using, but we're going to copy all of the line items for the kitchen, laundry, bathroom area, and we're going to dump them in. All right, we don't need any content manipulation, anything like that. Now, here's a big thing that's, you know, oftentimes a point of contention, okay? Really shouldn't be. Sometimes it should be. This water heater. So we're going to put up some new drywall behind this water heater. So do you need to get the water heater out? Do you need to remove that completely? Or because that's not an easy process, especially if you can avoid it. Sometimes you really, whether it's a boiler, whether it's an air return, whether it's a furnace, whatever the case is, sometimes if you need to get to what's behind there, it does make more sense just to take it out. But in this particular circumstance, we could figure the amount of time and effort and cost that's going to be associated with getting this water heater out. You can get drywall up there. Maybe it takes you a little bit longer, but we can get it back there. Now, we're really, throughout this whole estimate, we're really not going to be using that much drywall. So we're going to be utilizing a minimum charge on here. Some insurance carriers will be okay, want you to use the line item itself for a minimum charge. Others will let you just check off. They used to be known as base service charges, but then there's also an option here, labor minimums, where it will calculate what trades don't have very much value behind them, and you can put a minimum charge on there just to make more sense for a drywall person to come out, a painter to come out, a roofer, whatever the case is. Okay, so let's get back to business here. All right, so to just prep the room, I'm not going to allow for any content manipulation. Obviously, I'm not going to detach and reset the water heater. That's excessive at this point, so we're just going to get rid of everything here. Now, insulation. I'm going to leave an insulation labor minimum in there. Okay, and I'm just going to go ahead and assume, seeing as how this is a utility room, that there's the insulation in the remaining parts of that back wall. Okay, that's this wall here where we're seeing this insulation here. I'm going to assume that right next to it in this wall there's insulation as well. Obviously there was no insulation against the front wall, and we can see this wall right here doesn't have any. So it's just the back wall. So we'll calculate the back wall by doing LL. That's the length of the long wall times 2, because we're going to do it 2 feet up. Okay, boom. Now, since we're utilizing this labor minimum, we're going to make sure that this line item is set to material only. Okay, That way we have labor and material. Some people argue that, hey, insulation isn't an actual trade, and you're kind of right. But on this particular carrier, that's what they want. So they're going to get what they want. All right, so drywall, same thing as well. Now what we could do for the drywall, it doesn't really matter too much, but whenever I have the opportunity, I'll utilize this line item, the 1/2-inch drywall up to 2 feet. Okay, we'll do that. One on the calculation quantity for the labor minimum, and PF, the perimeter of the floor. That's going to calculate up to 2 feet from there, so we're good. Okay, so I know we're going to be doing a lot of paint, so I don't need a paint labor minimum. So we're going to mask the floor. All right, so the new drywall. So the new drywall, first of all, this drywall here, let me pull it up. So the drywall about halfway up, I mean, this drywall is in bad shape too. We could write to replace it, but honestly, I feel like there is a possibility that it's going to be rejected and they're going to say, well, was that damaged or is it just dirty? If it's dirty, why are we replacing it? So I'm just going to go ahead and anticipate that rejection. So I'm not going to replace that drywall, but I will write to clean it, seal it, and then paint it. It is much easier. It does make more sense to just replace it. Some may argue, but I'm not going to bother. All right, so 4 PF, that's 4 feet up the perimeter of the wall. All right, then I'm going to paint. I'm not going to paint all of the walls because all the walls aren't painted. Only that back wall is painted, so LL times 7, okay, because it's a 7-foot ceiling in there. So we got everything. There was no base trim or anything like that, so we're going to get rid of all those line items, and then that's going to bring us to the next category in our 6-figure macro, the floor covering, all right, or the floor system. All right, the only thing that we're going to be doing here is cleaning the concrete floor. All right, so we got that. Okay, so that brings us to the next section, which is doors and windows. Now, the insured took the door off, but if you remember in one of our photos, there's the door right there. So we're not going to replace the door because we got a photo showing that the door is right there, right? So what we will do, let's get rid of everything. Now, interior door slab, there is a reset line item. Reset only right here. Drop that in, we're in good shape. Now I am gonna look for a clean line item. Oh, actually, I'm not sure if you guys caught this. I did make one little tiny mistake. With the seal, I put 4. I put the perimeter, 4 PF. I don't want all of the walls. Let's give this another look. Okay, so there is a wall right here, some drywall right here as well. So here's what we'll do. We are going to clean we'll clean LL times 2. So that's the longest wall times 2, 2 feet up, okay? We're going to put that in a parentheses, and then in another parentheses, the depth of that wall, the depth of that room is 2 feet 8 inches. So we're going to do that multiplied by 4. So that what this basically means, what this formula is saying, we are going to clean an additional, 2 feet above the drywall that we're replacing against that long wall. We're replacing 2 feet up on that long wall, then we're gonna clean another 2 feet above that, okay? Then that other wall, that perpendicular wall that we were just looking at, we're gonna clean 4 feet up that entire wall. So it should be in this one. Okay, this is the line item that should have all those calculations, because now as far as ceiling goes, here's what we'll do. We're going to do 4 times, and then in parentheses, LL plus 2.8. So we're going to do 2 feet 8 inches for the depth of that room, plus the length of the long wall, 4 feet up. We're going to seal that, and instead of using this basic sealer, we're going to remove that, and we'll use a latex-based stain blocker. It's a little bit extra, I mean, we probably just changed it like a couple dollars. It's just a thicker primer that'll help prevent anything from seeping through if we couldn't get everything cleaned off. All right, so painting the wall. We're going to paint more than that, just back wall. So we'll do a very similar calculation. 7 feet up multiplied by the longest, the length of the long wall plus 2 feet 8 inches. Okay, so that's the long wall, perpendicular wall. Okay, so we've got everything we need right there. So what we could do, if I wasn't already utilizing a labor minimum for the drywall, if I was just doing straight drywall line items and there was plenty of other areas where I'm replacing drywall, I would throw an extra hour of drywall installer just to work around all the plumbing and whatnot. But since since we're already working with such minimal amounts of drywall, I'm not going to do that. So now let's look at the living room right here. So I already know I'm going to paint the ceiling just to get that done. Okay, so here they took off that wall panel, right? So I'm gonna paint the wall too, but what I notice is the walls in this little hallway are a different color opposed to this green colored living room. So I'm not gonna paint all the walls in the living room. I'm just going to paint the walls in this little hallway. Now you could do that I didn't do, I could just count that little hall area as a hallway completely separate. Then that would make my calculations make a little bit more sense. I would have to do less mathematical work, but whatever. I'll show you how to fix this up. Okay, so go back to our macro. We're gonna dump the line items back in there. Okay, I'm going to add content manipulation because we are gonna be painting that ceiling. I'll just put an hour in there. Now there were blinds or drapes over the window on that rear exterior wall, so I'll make sure that I include that as well. All right, assuming that 1 hour content manipulation is going to be used to kind of consolidate everything into the middle of the room, get things off the wall and whatnot. So we're going to cover everything up. I'll give them 200 square feet of masking I'll revise that. Masking to protection of the contents prior to repair. Okay, there we go. And everything else is fine. We'll get rid of that. All right, so we're ready to make our repairs. Now, that brings us to the drywall line item. Now, we're already utilizing one drywall labor minimum, so we're not going to use that again. But we will use the drywall 2 foot cut, material only. All right, and I'm going to calculate that. That entire wall is 7 feet 5 inches. Okay, so you go figure the doorway is about 2.5 feet. So we'll say 5. Only five linear feet of drywall is what we're going to be doing here. We're going to masking the entire floor prior to painting. Let's look at the room again. Are there any light fixtures that will mask? We have these little light fixtures right here. So I'll cover them up. We're not going to take them off the wall. I'll do 3 light fixtures. Okay, great. Now, ceiling. We have new drywall, so we're going to put a primer over that drywall. We have a 5 foot long, 2 foot cut, so 5 times 2 is 10. And then I'm also going to seal around the area where there was that paneling, and I'll throw a seal over the paneling as well. Why not? So we will do the 10 plus, go figure that opening was about 5 feet, then 7 feet on either side of that opening, 7 plus 7. And then you go figure that the opening itself may have been about 35 square feet. Okay, these are rough estimates. It's important not to get caught up in calculations so much. If it's an important calculation, absolutely do it. But if you're dealing with something like this, when it comes down to a line item that's 57 cents, just get it as close as you can. Okay, so painting. We are going to paint the ceiling, but we also want to paint some of the wall. So let's jump back in our sketch. Now here's how we can do this. let's zoom in. Now, a very quick and easy way that we can do this is just by taking the length of this wall, 7.5, is the same length as this wall, 7.5. Okay, so 7.5 plus 7.5 is 14.10. Now, this little wall here, there's barely anything on that wall, but we'll include it anyway. Really doesn't matter. So we got 14.10 here, 15, 16, 17, 10. Let's jump back to our estimate items. So we're going to calculate that by C for the ceiling plus, all right, and then in parentheses, we're going to put 1710, which is the perimeter of that little hallway, times 7. There we go. Now, we are going to change because there is a difference in color between the ceiling and the walls. So we are, at the end of this selector code, we're going to put a little plus symbol, and that will change it to 2 different colors. Okay, now, important to note, some carriers want you to do 2 coats, some carriers want you to would prefer if you do 1 coat, some carriers are like paint the entire wall of the affected wall and then blah, 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 blah. Good thing to always having a macro, having the 6-figure macro or whatever macro is that you set it up where you don't even give yourself the option to put the wrong line item in there. You already have the one that they want. I have, with the 6-figure macro suite, I have a handful of different carrier specific profiles that are preloaded in there based on the estimating guidelines that they put forth. All right. So, and what's important, whoever you are working for, you make that carrier's own macro, and you make changes to that macro as you go along. So it just makes you look even better. So let's pull this back up. Now we're going to be removing the baseboard and the trim here. Okay, the little base shoe. The base shoe is that little tiny piece right there. Okay, so let's jump back. So let's find our base trim. All right, so I'm not gonna bother. To me, it doesn't make any sense to paint all of the trim around that entire room, and it's only that one little tiny confined area. So 5 feet, we're gonna seal and paint the new base shoe. We're not gonna replace the baseboard, we're just gonna detach and reset it. The reason why we're gonna detach and reset the baseboard but replace the base shoe is because that base shoe is so small, it's probably gonna break anyway. So we're going to detach that. Now what we will do, I'm going to paint that 5 feet. Okay, then there wasn't any other baseboard on any other part of that wall, so we're going to get rid of the rest. So because we're detaching and resetting that baseboard, we're going to paint that baseboard 1 coat, and because we are removing and replacing that quarter round, we're going to seal and paint that. Floor, same thing. The floor was fine, but it wasn't an infected area, so we're just going to clean that up. All right, that brings us to our doors and windows. Now, usually in situations, in more normal situations, I'll paint all the baseboard going around a room, and I'll also paint any other trim that's connected to it to keep that continuous look. Now, against this wall with the baseboard that we're replacing, there was only 1 door opening, so I'm going to mask around that door opening, and I'm going to actually, let me actually bring that back. Now, one thing I will do, since we are replacing the drywall that's on that wall, and on that wall is some casing, I'm going to add an allowance to detach and reset some of that trim that's there. And then after we put it back, we're going to paint all of the casing around that door. So there we go. Okay, and that's all we need there. All right, now that brings us to the closet. All right, so looking at this closet, here's what I'm thinking I'm going to do. I'm going to throw a little bit of content manipulation allowance, a very little bit, just to get everything out and put everything back in. And then we are going to go around and replace the lower perimeter of drywall in here. Now notice, this room though has a baseboard without any trim. Now, also jump back. This baseboard here looks like it's 3 inches. This baseboard looks like it's 2. So let's go back. Let's change. Oh, it actually doesn't matter. We're not replacing the baseboard. We're just doing that. Okay. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to copy all the line items in here, because the line item use in the living room is very similar to what we're going to be doing in the closet. I'm going to change my content manipulation to 0.25. I'm going to get rid of the content protection, the drapes. I'm going to change my calculation from 2 feet on only 2 foot cut, only 5 feet to just, I'll do the whole perimeter. Okay, there you go. Realistically, could probably do less. We'll do divided by 2, so it's only 2 of those walls. Okay, we've got that. Now we're protecting the floor. There's no light fixtures in there. How much new drywall is going up? Well, it's 5.24 times 2. Okay, we're not going to paint the ceiling. We're just going to paint the walls in here. So because we're only painting the walls, that's only one color. We'll get rid of that. All right, we're going to mask the entire perimeter of the floor. And because the baseboard is so small, and it's not really of anything of a huge significance, I'm just going to replace all the baseboards in here. Replacing all the baseboards. Make sure your action is set to remove and replace. And paint the base, seal and paint your baseboard. Okay, we're still going to clean the floor. There's no casing around the door here, so we're going to get rid of that line item. Oh, now one thing I did forget to do. Now, we still need to put the paneling back on the wall. So, big question is, do we use the same paneling that's there, or should we give new paneling? What I'll just do, I know it's not going to equate to a whole lot. I am just going to replace the paneling that's there. I'm going to utilize a labor minimum. Now, this is going to be the third use of a labor minimum. Usually, there's a 3 labor minimum max. All right, so I have the labor minimum in there. It's only $200 about. Then I'll switch my paneling to material only. So we have labor and material. It's 35 square feet. It's $25 worth of material. Okay, so what we'll do here, we're going to do seal paint paneling. I'm going to seal and paint the paneling, 35 square feet. Okay, I'm going to take these line items and put them in a place that makes more sense, right up there. Now, because I'll be a little bit more technical with this, because I am sealing and painting 35 square feet of paneling, I will deduct that out of this area here. Okay, I'll take that 35 out because we're not going to seal that, and we're also not going to paint that. So what I'll just do here is put minus 35, and that'll take the 35 off of it. So that's that. Okay, so we got everything we need. Let's go down to our debris removal. Not a whole lot of debris that we're taking out of there. A little bit of drywall, a little bit of insulation. That's it. All right, so 1 pickup truck load. Now that we've got everything, one of the greatest things about the 6-figure macro, or using a macro in general, and utilizing this, is putting on the different notes that you should be aware of before you submit your claim. If you want to build a great relationship with your client, it's having, especially with your file reviewers, the people that are looking over your estimate when you submit it, it's making sure that your estimate requires the least amount of work on their part. If you give your file reviewer the least amount of work that they possibly have to do, it's like they're making free money, and they will love that. So I always try to look at this, and for this particular carrier, they don't want overhead and profit applied to certain trades, so I have that listed right there. I'm not going to be applying overhead and profit to this claim, so it really doesn't matter to me. They don't want any depreciation on masking for paint, so I'm going to get that, and they want all of the depreciations checked, okay? And if it's a wind or hail claim, they want a weather report. So these are things that I'll look at before I even get to the point where I'm buttoning up my estimate and sending it. So at least these 4 things, you're not going to catch me making a mistake there. So now from here, all I would do is apply my depreciation, make sure everything's set, and then I would move on to my report. This is the conclusion of this episode of free Xactimate training. I hope you guys enjoyed everything. If you haven't already, go check out the 6-figure macro. Like I said, I don't do a single estimate without using that 6-figure macro, because not only the money that it earns me by not missing out on certain line items, but also just by the time that it saves. Just by putting everything there, and it makes my estimates look way better. So I can't even measure the amount of money I made just because a claims company will prefer my estimate over another adjuster's estimate that says, like, you know, main level at the top, and just it's like line item vomit all through it. So guys, hope you enjoyed everything. I'll catch you on the next episode.